Vectors are collections of items of the same type. The memory for the vector is allocated on the heap, and the items are actually stored next to each other in memory. My name is Ricky, and this is the dev method. So today we're going to talk a little bit about vectors, which is one of the collections inside the standard library for Rust. Vectors are very similar to the data structure of a list, or some people call them stacks. Some people call it a linked list. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, and if you compare it to other languages, this is primarily what you'd reach for when you want to store something in a large collection that's like a list. So if you want to stick around to the end, I'll show you a really cool way to iterate through all the items in a vector, but then also get their indexes at the same time in a safe way. All right, so here on line 13, we have a vector that we've initialized or created or constructed. And this is given to you automatically without using any use statement inside of Rust. So you don't have to say like use std collections or anything like that. Something I want you to notice that's popped up on the screen here is that there's some generics involved in here. That's what those little angle brackets are for. So inside of there, we're just using the standard I32 integer type. But notice there's a second generic on there, and it says global. So that's actually something we're not going to get into today. That's more for advanced stuff, but that's about how it's stored. So here we have an immutable v, which is of type vec, and then you do the angle brackets, put in the type, and then just new. So watch this. If I was to take this part away, we actually wouldn't know what type is the element of the items in the array. So in this case, we don't know how much at compile time we're supposed to allocate for this array, because we need to put the elements all next to each other in memory, because that's how this works. So the elements of a vector are stored inside the heap, and as you add or push new items onto it, the size grows. So in this case, we're making an immutable one, and it's completely empty. There will never be anything in it, but that's the idea here. Now, there's actually another way to use the vector, and there's, or at least another way to construct it. And something that I use more often is a macro. So the macro is used like this. It's just lowercase vec and then the exclamation, and then open square bracket, close square bracket. You can also put your elements in here. Now, if you do this, this is where type inference starts coming in handy. So we actually don't need to annotate the type of v. We just have it as 1, 2, and 3. That's actually the same because if you recall in some of the previous videos about data types, this is the default integer type that Rust uses when you don't specify which type it is. So we could say it's a vec of I8. And now these are vectors, or these numbers resemble a vector of I8. All right, so now let's say we want to update the vector. So we're going to create a mutable vector. So that's where we have mut v here. Now, notice there's no type annotation here. So what would the type of this vector be? Well, as the compiler is traversing your lines of code, it actually finds that you're just putting in these number literals in here, which end up being I32. So type inference is actually still used in this case because we have in the context what's being pushed onto it. So this is a mutable v, and that's how we get these pushes here. And so as we're pushing each item onto that vector, it's actually checking its capacity if it has enough memory already allocated to put this new item in the vector, in the valid memory space. Now, if it finds out there's not, then it actually resizes. So it completely reallocates another size in the heap that will fit the next capacity or maybe bigger. And then it replaces every single element. It puts a copy into that array, or into that space in memory. Very similar to what like an array is in Swift, or if you've looked at other languages, it's very similar to that. So when we're talking about Rust, some of the things that always pop up in my mind are when are the values dropping? And then also like, are we borrowing? Is it a mutable borrow? Is it, do we have ownership? Is it a mutable reference? You know, these are a couple of things to think about. So let's look at this example here, because one of the things we need to specify is we have a scope of v, and this is again a vector of I32. Now, at the end of this scope on line 17, this is when V gets dropped, and therefore all of its elements also get dropped. So let's say we still have the vector of the I32 again, but we want to now look at some of the items that are inside of it. So let's take a look at this example. So we have V again. We have a couple of items in that vector. Now, let's say we want to get the third thing. So it's indexed by 0. So you could start at 0 being the first element, 1 being the second, and so on. So that's why on line 15, we have the third one is the index 2. But notice that we are referencing V, and we have a reference to that particular item. Now we're using that item and we're saying, let's print it out here. So that's cool. But another way we could actually index into our array is with get. So notice here some of the Rust analyzer stuff's filling in for us, but this is expecting an index, just like the one up here is on 15. This is an immutable vector. So getting the third thing and referencing it and then getting it a second time is actually completely valid. There's nothing wrong with that. If you look at line 18, we're using a match statement. Now, if you recall, match statement, when it looks like this, it has some and then it has none. Essentially, what we're getting back from the get is an option type. So the option type is whatever the items are. So this is I32. So we're getting back an option of I32. So if we do have something, we print it out. If we don't have something, we say that there's no third element. This is actually really good if you want to stay within inside the bounds of the array. Now, what happens if we wanted to go outside the bounds of the array? Like we want to go, past a certain point. So this I2 or this 2 right here is a U size. And if you recall in our data types, the U size, this is specifically different per operating system. So whatever the system has this as an actual size in memory. But this is actually what's used to get an index into this vector. So let's say we tried to get something at like index 100. So that doesn't exist. And in the both cases that we looked at here where we get a reference to one of those items, we're actually going to have a panic at runtime, which means it's an error. So this will compile, this will be fine, but as soon as we run the program, it's actually going to crash. Now, this line 16, if we use this one, this actually will not crash because what we would get back is an option of I32. And in this case, because it's outside the bounds of that vector in that heap allocated space, we're actually getting back none. So we're forced to reason about in our code whether something is there or not. So it's a safe operation. So let's revisit our ownership borrowing rules for a second. Let's take a look here at line 13. So again, we have a vector, but this time it's a mutable vector. And we're going to reference the first thing, right? But then we're going to push onto that vector. And then we're going to print. Now, there is an error here. I'm not going to show it to you, but just think about it for a second. Why would that be a problem? Well, I mentioned a second ago that as we push new things onto this vector, it's possible that we don't have the space allocated in the heap. Like let's say it's 10 things and we're trying to push on the 11th thing. Or like in this case, let's say it's 5. So we have 5 spaces in memory, and that's our capacity. Now we're trying to push on a 6th element. Well, if we don't have enough space for that, we need to completely reallocate new memory because everything has to be in order. We got, the operating system's going to find that for us. Then we push the new item on, but also having to copy all those values back over into this new allocated space on the heap. So if we were to get the first thing and then push something onto it, the address of where that lives in memory on line 15, that actually might change after we do line 17, after something new gets pushed. So that's why Rust is helping you here and telling you that you can't do this. Let's look at the error output from the command line. We'll just run cargo check just to see what it looks like. Okay, so I ran it, and here's what it says. We have the immutable borrow occurs here. Then we say a mutable borrow occurs here. And then we say the immutable borrow is used later. So how could we fix this? Well, we could just take out that line, but then we never use first. Or what we could do is if we need that item just in an operation like print, let's just print it out first, and then let's push something new onto it. That will actually fix that code. All right, so enough about memory and space and stuff like that. Let's take a look at iterating through the values of the vector, because this is probably something you're going to want to do. So line 13, we got our vector again in V. Now, if we want to iterate over it and get all the things I, so we here have a reference of an I32. This means whatever index we're at, that's the value we're getting. So the first time through this array, it's going to be 10. Or the first time through the iteration, it's going to be 100. The next time through the iteration, it's going to be 32. And then the one after that is going to be 57. Let's run it and try it. So there we go. All right, so now let's say we have a mutable vector and we want to change some of the items in the array, or we want to change some of the items in the vector. So line 13, we have V again. Now we're going to add 50 to each one of them. So what happens here is that we get a mutable reference to V. And then this I here, notice its type being a mutable reference as well, meaning that we can dereference the value that's in there. And since this is a plus save, this is very much like saying get I plus 50. Similar idea, right? But we're using the dereference and we're using this plus equals to save it back into I. So if you recall from the beginning of the video, I talked about how each of the elements have to be the same type. Well, we can actually kind of skirt around the rules of that. I'm going to show you how to do that. So here we have an enum. So let's say we're going to put this enum in the vector. So we have row as being our vector. So each item in the row is just a spreadsheet cell. Now each one of its variants of this enum is actually a different type. So we have an int type, we have the float type, we have a string type, and we can add on more. Now the reason why this works is actually at compile time, we know how big one of these variants is going to be. But the kind of tricky thing here is that we're putting on different types here. So I can say like store something with an I32 and here store something with a string and put it in that vector. So something I want to be really explicit about with you guys is that notice here we don't have all the variants in the vector when we actually create it. But if we have that mutable vector, we can actually push onto it. And it could be one of the other same variants that are in there, but a different value. Or it could be something like what we have here. So here I'll change float to be just the integer and 10. So all these are valid use cases for using an enum when storing something inside a vector. All right, so here's the thing we have with the vector and a safe way to enumerate through all of them and also keep track of which index you're at. So if we take the vector and we have this method we can actually call iter, which gives us an iterator, which means traversing over the entire vector. And when we do this, we have a couple of different special associated functions or methods that we can call on it. And the one I'm using here is enumerate. So what enumerate does is actually gives us back in this for in loop, the first item being an index, which is the usize type, meaning like if we wanted the third thing, we would have put in a 2, right? We did that a couple moments ago. But here it's actually giving it to us as we iterate through the vector. So that's kind of cool. Instead of just the elements, we also get the index as well. And so here's that element. Notice it's also a reference, just like how we had the regular iteration that we had earlier in the video. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, have a good one.